You clicked on this video because of your son. And before you dismiss that sentence, before you tell yourself everything is probably fine, there is something you need to hear. Because what I am about to reveal has nothing to do with luck, nothing to do with superstition, and everything to do with a silent battle that thousands of sons are fighting right now. Without ever telling their parents. Your son may smile, he may laugh, he may tell everyone he's okay, but deep inside, there is a weight growing heavier every single day, a weight he doesn't know how to explain, a burden he carries alone. And if you stay with me until the end of this message, you'll discover the signs that almost everyone misses. The signs that appear long before the breakdown, long before the tears, long before the moment a parent says, "I wish I had known," because by then, it's already too late. Now listen carefully. Think about your son, not the version everyone sees, the real version, the one lying awake at night, the one staring at the ceiling. The one who keeps thoughts locked inside his mind, because something has changed, maybe recently, maybe slowly over time, but something is different. The strange part. Most parents notice the change, but they explain it away. He is just growing up. He is just tired. He is just busy. Yet the truth is often much deeper. There comes a point in a young man's life when the pressure begins arriving from every direction. Pressure to succeed, pressure to earn, pressure to become somebody, pressure to prove himself, pressure to hide weakness, pressure to never fail. And every year that pressure becomes heavier, until one day, the son who once laughed without fear begins carrying invisible mountains on his shoulders. No one sees the mountains. That's what makes them dangerous. Because invisible burdens create invisible wounds. And invisible wounds can become the deepest wounds of all. Right now, your son may be standing in the middle of one of the biggest storms of his life, and nobody around him realizes it. Not his friends, not his teachers, not even the people who love him most. Because boys learn something very early. They learn how to hide pain. They learn how to bury fear. They learn how to pretend. And after years of pretending, even they forget what the truth feels like. Imagine carrying a backpack. Every day someone places another stone inside it. One stone for disappointment. One stone for rejection. One stone for loneliness. One stone for self-doubt. One stone for mistakes. One stone for fear of the future. The backpack becomes heavier, and heavier, and heavier. Yet your son keeps walking. Because that's what he believes he must do. Keep walking, keep smiling, keep pretending. But eventually, every backpack reaches a breaking point. And that's the moment every parent fears. The moment when all the hidden weight suddenly becomes too much. Now here's the revelation that shocks most people. The sons who struggle the most are often the ones who look strongest, the ones who say they refine, the ones who never complain, the ones who help everyone else. Why? Because they become experts at hiding what hurts, experts at acting normal, experts at suffering silently. And silent suffering is one of the most dangerous things in the world. Because nobody rushes to help a person who looks okay. Nobody notices a wound they cannot see. Your son may be carrying worries he has never spoken aloud. Worries about money, worries about his future, worries about disappointing people, worries about whether he's good enough. And those worries don't disappear. They grow, especially in the dark, especially at night, especially when he is alone with his thoughts. There is something else you need to know. Many sons today feel trapped between two worlds, the world they dreamed about and the world they actually live in. The gap between those worlds creates frustration, confusion, exhaustion, and sometimes hopelessness. They look around and see other people succeeding, other people achieving, other people winning. And they quietly ask themselves a painful question: why not me? That question can haunt someone for years, because every unanswered question eventually becomes a shadow, and shadows grow larger when ignored. But here is the part most people never talk about. Your son doesn't need perfection. He doesn't need endless advice. He doesn't need someone to solve every problem. Sometimes, what he truly needs is to know he isn't fighting alone. Because isolation changes people. Isolation convinces them that nobody understands, nobody cares, nobody sees. And when a person starts believing that, their world becomes darker than anyone realizes. Have you ever noticed how some conversations never happen? The important conversations, the honest conversations, the conversations where someone finally says, "I am struggling." Those conversations remain trapped inside people's hearts, not because they don't want help, but because they're afraid of judgment, afraid of disappointment, afraid of appearing weak. So they stay silent, and silence becomes a prison built one unspoken thought at a time. Your son may never tell you exactly what he's carrying, but there are clues, always clues. The late nights, the distant look in his eyes, the sudden quietness, the loss of excitement, the way he withdraws, the way he seems present physically, yet somewhere else mentally. Those signs matter, far more than most people realize, because pain speaks, even when words do not. And now comes the once in a lifetime realization that changes everything. The greatest battles are rarely visible. The strongest warriors are often wounded, and the people who need support the most usually ask for it the least. Think about that, because it explains so much. It explains why struggles remain hidden, why suffering remains invisible, why families sometimes miss the warning signs, not because they don't care, but because the signs don't arrive with alarms. They arrive quietly, almost silently, until one day everyone looks back and sees what they missed. Tonight, your son may be carrying fears he has never shared, dreams he has never spoken, worries he has never expressed, and a part of him may be wondering whether anyone truly understands. That is why this message matters, not because it predicts the future, not because it claims certainty, but because awareness changes everything. Awareness opens eyes. Awareness starts conversations. Awareness creates connection. And connection can become the light that guides someone through darkness. So if this message found you today, don't ignore it. Don't rush past it. Remember it. Because sometimes the most important thing a son needs is not another lecture, not another expectation, not another demand, but a reminder that he matters, a reminder that he is seen, a reminder that his value does not depend on success, a reminder that he does not have to carry every burden alone. And if there is one final truth you should remember, it is this: behind many smiles, there are battles. Behind many strong faces, there are fears. Behind many quiet moments, there are storms. Your son may be facing one of those storms right now, and while you cannot control every challenge he encounters, you can remind him of something powerful, something life-changing, something that every son needs to hear. That no matter how heavy the burden becomes, no matter how dark the road appears, no matter how impossible the struggle feels, he is not alone. And sometimes, those 3 words can change the course of an entire life. Now listen very carefully, because what you are about to hear is the part that most people never discover, the part hidden beneath the surface, the part that explains why some sons slowly drift away from themselves without anyone noticing. And it begins with something unexpected: regret. Not the regret parents feel, not the regret teachers talk about, the regret that quietly grows inside a young man's mind. The regret of opportunities missed, the regret of words left unsaid, the regret of chances never taken, the regret of becoming someone different than the person he once imagined. At first, these regrets seem small, almost harmless, but they don't stay small. They multiply. 1 becomes 5, 5 become 20, 20 become hundreds, until a young man starts carrying an entire collection of invisible disappointments. The frightening part: most of these disappointments never leave his mind. They replay, again, and again, and again, every mistake, every failure, every embarrassing moment, every rejection. His mind stores them, not because he wants it to, but because the human mind is strange. It often remembers pain more clearly than joy. And if those memories aren't challenged, they begin writing a story, a dangerous story, a story that says, "You not enough. You falling behind. Everyone else is doing better. You'll never catch up." Those sentences become whispers. The whispers become beliefs. And beliefs become reality. That is how tremendous struggles begin. Not with one disaster, but with thousands of tiny thoughts repeated over time. Now imagine your son walking through life carrying those thoughts every day. Imagine waking up each morning already feeling behind, already feeling pressure, already feeling uncertain. Most people would struggle, yet he continues moving forward, which means something remarkable is happening. Despite everything, he keeps going. That strength deserves recognition, because people often celebrate visible victories, but they overlook invisible courage. The courage to keep trying, the courage to keep showing up, the courage to keep fighting battles nobody else can see. And make no mistake, those battles are real. There is another revelation you need to hear. Many sons are secretly terrified of disappointing the people they love. They may never admit it. They may never say it aloud. But deep inside, that fear exists. They want to make their parents proud. They want to succeed. They want to prove themselves. And when life doesn't unfold the way they expected, they blame themselves, even when circumstances were never fully within their control. That self-blame becomes heavy, much heavier than people realize, because a person can survive many hardships, but constantly attacking themselves from within. That's different. That's exhausting. Imagine carrying an enemy inside your own mind, an enemy that follows you everywhere, an enemy that questions every decision, an enemy that magnifies every flaw, an enemy that never sleeps. For many young men, that enemy exists, and nobody around them knows. The world sees confidence. The world sees normal behavior. The world sees smiles, but behind the scenes, an internal war continues. Now here comes one of the most shocking truths. The things your son worries about today may not even be real. They may be fears about the future, scenarios that never happen, problems that don't exist yet. But the human brain doesn't always know the difference. It reacts to imagined dangers as if they are already happening. That's why anxiety feels so powerful. That's why uncertainty feels so heavy. That's why countless people spend years suffering over events that never occur. And every time the mind creates another fearful story, the burden grows. Another stone enters the backpack. Another layer of pressure forms. Another piece of peace disappears. But wait, because something extraordinary happens when a person finally understands this. The moment they realize thoughts are not always facts, everything begins changing. The chains weaken. The fears lose power. The storm starts calming, yet reaching that realization is difficult, especially when someone feels trapped inside their own head. This is why support matters. This is why connection matters. This is why being understood matters. A person can endure incredible hardship when they know they aren't facing it alone. But isolation? Isolation magnifies everything. A small fear becomes a giant fear. A small problem becomes a giant problem. A temporary setback becomes a permanent disaster. That is the illusion loneliness creates. And loneliness is far more common than most people realize. Your son may be surrounded by people. He may have friends. He may talk every day, yet still feel alone. Because loneliness isn't about how many people are around you. It's about how many truly understand you. And those are not the same thing. Now think back. Think about the boy your son used to be. The version of him that laughed without overthinking. The version that dreamed freely. The version that believed almost anything was possible. That version still exists. Hidden perhaps. Buried perhaps. But not gone. Because people don't lose themselves completely. They lose sight of themselves. There is a difference. And that difference changes everything. Because what is hidden can be found. What is buried can be uncovered. What feels broken can be rebuilt. That truth has transformed countless lives. And it can transform his too. But first, something must happen. The cycle must be interrupted. The endless loop of fear. The endless loop of self-doubt. The endless loop of believing every negative thought. Because those loops steal years. Sometimes decades. They convince people that tomorrow will be identical to today. That nothing will improve. That nothing will change. History proves otherwise. Again and again, the people who once felt lost found direction. The people who once felt weak discovered strength. The people who once felt hopeless found purpose. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because they kept moving, one step, then another, until the darkness slowly began fading. And this leads us to perhaps the most important revelation so far. Your son's current struggle is not necessarily his final destination. Read that again in your mind. His current struggle is not necessarily his final destination, because temporary chapters often feel permanent while we reliving through them. The storm feels endless. The pain feels eternal. The uncertainty feels impossible. Yet later, looking back, people realize they were living through a chapter, not the entire story. And stories can change. In fact, they often change when least expected. A single conversation, a single opportunity, a single realization, a single moment of encouragement. Those small moments can alter an entire future. That's why nothing should be underestimated. Not kindness, not hope, not belief, not support, not understanding, because what seems small today may become life-changing tomorrow. And as we continue, you are about to uncover an even deeper truth, a truth about the hidden pressure many sons carry every day, a truth that explains why some struggles become overwhelming, and why certain wounds remain invisible for years. What comes next may completely change the way you see your son forever. And now, we arrive at the deepest part of this message, the part very few people ever talk about, the part hidden beneath every smile, every achievement, every struggle, and every fear. Because there is one burden many sons carry that is heavier than all the others combined. The burden of feeling that their worth must be earned. Think about that for a moment. Many young men grow up believing they must constantly prove themselves, prove their intelligence, prove their strength, prove their value, prove they deserve respect, prove they deserve love. Prove they deserve acceptance. And when someone spends years trying to prove their worth, they begin feeling exhausted, not physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, because no matter what they accomplish, it never feels like enough. A victory lasts one day, then the pressure returns. A success lasts 1 week. Then a new expectation appears. A goal is achieved. Then another goal replaces it. The finish line keeps moving, further, and further away, until they begin wondering, when do I finally become enough? That question has haunted countless sons, maybe even yours. And here is the shocking truth. The answer was never hidden in achievements. It was never hidden in money. It was never hidden in status. It was never hidden in perfection. Because perfection does not exist. No human being reaches it. No human being ever will. Yet millions continue chasing it. And that chase creates tremendous suffering. Now imagine your son standing at a crossroads. One path tells him he must constantly prove himself. The other path tells him he already has value simply because he exists. One path creates endless pressure. The other creates freedom. One path creates fear. The other creates peace. Most people spend years walking the first path before discovering the second, and some never discover it at all. That is why this message matters. Because awareness changes direction. Awareness changes choices. Awareness changes lives. There is something else you should know. Many sons secretly believe they must solve every problem alone. They believe asking for help is weakness. They believe vulnerability is dangerous. They believe silence is strength. But reality teaches a different lesson. The strongest people are not the ones who never struggle. The strongest people are the ones who face struggles honestly. The strongest people are the ones who keep moving forward despite fear. The strongest people are the ones brave enough to admit when they need support. That kind of courage is rare. And rare things are valuable. Now let's uncover one final revelation. A revelation that changes everything. Every person carries two voices inside their mind. One voice creates fear. The other creates possibility. One voice says, "You can't." The other says, "Try again." One voice focuses on failure. The other focuses on growth. One voice points toward darkness. The other points toward light. Every day, those voices compete. Every day, a battle takes place. And whichever voice receives attention becomes stronger. This is true for everyone, including your son. If fear receives attention every day, fear grows. If hope receives attention every day, hope grows. If self-doubt receives attention every day, self-doubt grows. If confidence receives attention every day, confidence grows. The mind works like a garden. Whatever receives water survives. Whatever survives expands. And whatever expands eventually shapes reality. That is why thoughts matter. That is why words matter. That is why encouragement matters. More than most people realize. Because a single sentence can remain inside someone's mind for years. Sometimes decades. One cruel sentence can create wounds. One encouraging sentence can create strength. One moment of belief can transform an entire future. And that brings us to the reason this message appeared before you. Not to create fear. Not to predict disaster. Not to convince you that something terrible is guaranteed to happen. But to remind you of something powerful. Your son is fighting battles you cannot always see. He is carrying thoughts you cannot always hear. He is facing challenges you may never fully understand, just like every human being. But there is also something extraordinary about him. Something that no struggle can erase. Something that no setback can destroy. Something that no failure can remove. Potential. The potential to grow. The potential to learn. The potential to overcome. The potential to become stronger than he ever imagined. History is filled with people who felt lost before finding direction. People who felt weak before discovering strength. People who felt broken before rebuilding themselves. The chapter they were living was not the final chapter. And neither is your son's. Because life changes. People change. Circumstances change. Storms pass. Night becomes morning. Winter becomes spring. Pain becomes wisdom. And struggles become stories of survival. That is the pattern repeated throughout human history. Again, and again, and again. So if there is one message you carry with you after this video, let it be this. Never underestimate what someone is carrying. Never assume silence means peace. Never assume strength means the absence of pain. And never underestimate the power of reminding someone that they matter. Because sometimes, the words people need most are also the words they hear least. The words, "I believe in you." The words, "You are stronger than you think." The words, "You don't have to face everything alone." Those words can become anchors during storms, lights during darkness, hope during uncertainty, and perhaps, at this very moment, your son needs those words more than anyone realizes. Maybe he will never tell you. Maybe he will never ask. Maybe he will continue smiling while carrying invisible weight. But deep inside, every son wants to know something. Every son wants to know that even when life becomes overwhelming, even when mistakes happen, even when dreams take longer than expected, even when the road becomes difficult, he is still valued, still respected, still loved, and still capable of creating a future greater than anything he currently sees. Because tremendous struggles do not define a person. How they rise after those struggles does. And your son's story, no matter what chapter he is living right now, is far from over. In fact, the most important chapters may still be waiting ahead.